Donkey Kong is finally back in a headlining role 11 years after his last outing, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. And not only is he back, but he's back in 3D, a full 26 years after his last 3D game, Donkey Kong 64. When Donkey Kong Bananza was announced alongside the Switch 2 earlier this year, I just about jumped out of my chair and screamed. A new DK game had been heavily rumored for some time, with the evidence mounting that DK would be getting a major revival. He was given a major role in the Mario movie, Universal theme parks were expanded to include Donkey Kong areas, and Donkey Kong Country Returns was re-released in HD on Switch just this year. So to finally see this game was like a dream come true. It's also worth noting that Donkey Kong Land on Game Boy was the first game I ever played as a child, and that Donkey Kong Country 2 on the SNES is my favorite game of all time. Needless to say, this is a special series for me. So imagine my shock when I saw my childhood hero with a brand new redesign. While I was happy to see a new DK game, I didn't take to the redesign at first, with DK looking too cute and goofy for my liking. That colored my approach to Bananza, and I did go in with some apprehension. Could a DK revival with a new design, no involvement from Rareware or Retro Studios, and development by the 3D Mario team really do justice to the childhood nostalgia I have for this series? And not only that, why was Diddy Kong sidelined for an inexplicably child-aged Pauline? Was Bananza really going to discard everything that made the Country series so special, just to turn into a Mario-adjacent 3D platformer? Would my childhood really be unceremoniously dumped in the trash and forgotten about? Well, after 50 hours and 100% completion of Donkey Kong Bananza, I'm so relieved to say that that's not the case at all. Donkey Kong Bananza, for the most part, is a satisfying and fun game, but not without its quirks. So, how does it measure up to the storied legacy of Country and 64? And as the first major, first-party single-player game for the Switch 2, is it really the killer app the expensive and controversial new console desperately needs right now? Those questions and more will be answered in this extensive review. So let's dive right in. First of all, I just have to start with the story and characters. What this game does for characterization, lore, and world building is nothing short of a gaming miracle. As a big-time fan of Donkey Kong games, I had given up hope that we'd ever see DK taking a starring role in a big game again. 2014's Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is one of my favorite games ever, possibly the best 2D platformer ever made. However, it didn't exactly become a big success and was passed over by most gamers, like the Wii U in general. Its developer Retro Studios was moved off of Donkey Kong and put back to work on Metroid Prime. So, imagine my disbelief at this year's Switch 2 reveal direct when it was revealed DK was not only headlining a new game, but a big-budget 3D adventure, made in-house at Nintendo in Japan, complete with a brand new design. Now as for this design, I didn't really like it at first, but after only 20 minutes of playing Bananza, I came around entirely. DK has never been this charming, this expressive, this full of life. While he is a bit more cute compared to his more tough and cool design of Rareware games past, he still retains his toughness despite his more cuter stylings. It's incredible that Nintendo have managed to split the difference between his classic pre-Rareware look, his Rareware look, and his more modern look that appeared in the Mario movie. With Bananza, it's clear Nintendo wants to bring DK back to superstar status. And it doesn't just stop at DK. Bananza doesn't excise the Rareware or Retro Studios games from canon, but lovingly embraces them. There are cameo appearances from Diddy and Dixie, Cranky and Rambi play a role in the plot, and there are loads of homages and references to previous games. While the references to the Retro Studios games were too few, there were plenty to the Rareware games. I would have liked a few more references to the retro games and was surprised there weren't many considering Returns got re-released in HD earlier this year, but they know the nostalgia lies in Country and DK64, so Nintendo went harder in that direction. And for me, I couldn't be happier. The Country games are probably my favorite games ever, so to see them get their due makes me happy. As a nostalgic gamer approaching middle age, I imagine the members of the development team were the same. They grew up playing Country, so wanted to pay their respects in their big budget reimagining of the franchise. You could argue that there's too much fan service, but I personally believe there's no such thing, and it's certainly not the case here. I'll touch more on what's new and innovative later, but first we need to address the human in the room, Pauline. At first, I was really disappointed that Pauline, who has inexplicably become a child, was announced as DK's companion for Bananza. Diddy is right there. I wanted DK and Diddy back together for another adventure, not a human character who speaks in fully voiced dialogue throughout. While yes, I found Pauline a bit chatty, as she never does shut up and is always commentating on what's going on, I I was won over eventually. It's an incredibly solid vocal performance from Jenny Kidd, who brings a real goofy charm to the character. Even though she's chatty, I'm glad she doesn't treat the player like a baby, like a lot of chatty companions do in recent games, like Mimir in God of War or Dollman in Death Stranding 2. She's there to commentate, be charming and tell the story, not as an intrusive guide that can't be turned off. And man, what a story it is! It's a 3D platformer, so don't go in expecting a playable movie or anything, but by the end you can really feel the growth between DK and Pauline. By giving DK a human to protect on his journey, it makes him that much more endearing to the player, and helps with Nintendo's goal of building DK back up to heroic superstar status. For what it is, it's a charming, moving yet simple story, and a step up from the team's last game, Super Mario Odyssey. The new villains, Void, Poppy and Grumpy Kong, also make a strong impression and round out the narrative. Nintendo done cooked here, man. Nostalgic yet refreshing, fantastical yet human, goofy yet epic, Nintendo have given DK the overdue royal treatment he deserves. While I'd never go into a DK game expecting a Last of Us level narrative, it is one of, if not the best storytelling Nintendo have ever done in a 3D mascot platformer. The only downside is by adding young Pauline, the DK lore and timeline are now in absolute shambles. It's better to just not think deeply about the lore, or you'll end up going cross-eyed. Just enjoy Bananza for what it is, a DK game that does everything right, pays its respects to what came before, yet still forges its own path. And speaking of forging its own path, this is where Bananza truly does do something new, it's gameplay. I don't want to say that Bananza has the best 3D platformer gameplay of all time. It is certainly up there, but such an honor is purely a subjective thing. But I will say this, Bananza's gameplay is unlike anything in gaming that's ever been done before. Not content with simply running and jumping around 3D open spaces, every aspect of Bananza's gameplay is centered around its central mechanic, destructible terrain. The idea of leaning into DK's size and strength is what really separates Bananza from its 3D platforming peers, and the choice was a smart one. While the trailers make it seem like just a gimmick, it's far from the reality. There are a huge number of terrain types, and how they interact with each other is unlike anything I've played before. When Breath of the Wild was released, people celebrated its physics engine as being unlike anything ever seen before, especially how it encouraged experimentation. The same can be said about Bananza. DK can rip off chunks of terrain and throw them, then these chunks will interact differently depending on what type of terrain they're thrown at. For example, throwing gold will cause explosions, throwing dirt at stone will create a new platform, throwing snow at lava will dissolve it, and so on. The potential combinations and applications are limitless, meaning you can solve platforming challenges or defeat enemies in innumerable ways. It creates the illusion of total freedom that Nintendo really started in the Switch generation with Breath of the Wild, iterated on with Super Mario Odyssey and Tears of the Kingdom, and have iterated on again here in its Switch 2 debut. A lot of people might miss the tightly controlled linearity of Donkey Kong Country or Mario 3D World or whatever, and in some aspects I do too, but I wholly, unabashedly love what they're doing here. This is what gaming is all about, giving us a sense of freedom and movement without actually having to move. Nintendo absolutely nailed this in Bananza, as you feel every punch to the wall and the wind in your fur over this 50-hour journey. But where this really shines and goes to the next level is in the titular Bananzas, DK's transformation into powerful godlike animals. 3 of these were revealed before release, Kong, Zebra and Ostrich, and there are 2 more which I won't spoil. Fun as they are a bit hit and miss. Kong Bananza is just friggin' awesome, making punching and terrain destruction more powerful. Ostrich gives you the power of flight, opening up more freedom, and one of the other 2 opens up insane gameplay options, and is a bit OP, but in the best way. However, I barely used the Zebra, which gives you a fast dash. There aren't actually that many use cases for it, and I found it a bit hard to control, as well as the other unrevealed one, which also didn't have that many use cases either. Still, the variety on offer is admirable, and as you can power them up with a skill tree, feeling DK get more and more powerful over the journey is just one way Bananza keeps rewarding you for playing. So mechanically, Bananza is near flawless, with just a few nitpicks about some of the transformations. It's a wholly unique gameplay experience unlike anything that's been ever done before, yet still remains true to the spirit of the genre and DK's legacy. Now, onto collectibles and challenges. There's a lot to collect. Bananas for the skill tree, fossils to get costumes, records for the jukebox, and infinite gold for item purchases that can be found everywhere by punching terrain. However, DK64 this isn't. Bananas and fossils can be found everywhere, and using the sonar to find items in walls, or finding and buying banana and fossil maps to pin their locations on your main map, means finishing your collection is a more than manageable task. I collected everything the game had to offer in around 50 hours, while still taking my time to explore the world. This means every task is is manageable and achievable. While as DK gets more abilities and more powerful, the level of challenge does go down, but I didn't have any issues with this as Bananza's gameplay is still so damn fun. While it might not be as challenging later on, where you can basically just punch your way through terrain and come across bananas and fossils, the gameplay and mechanics are so rock solid that you will still have a great time. Fun is the key concept here, and you are always having it in this game. Which is why I like that certain challenges take place in separated spaces, bonus rooms if you like. Another Donkey Kong staple to be sure, but these provide true skill and ability checks, where just punching your way around won't result in success. More classic in the way that you have to time your jumps or approach an enemy in a more considered way, these were my favourite parts of the game. Doubly so the handful that pay homage to country or arcade games. While the Jungle Japes homage is to be expected from the Odyssey team, who homaged 8-bit Mario every 5 minutes in Odyssey, the Bramble Blast homage is more considered as it's a fan favourite stage, and I find it so funny that you have to play it as DK, who was not even playable in DKC2 where the stage originates from. Anyway, for those who are put off by the core concept of destructible terrain, these separated challenge levels still provide a classic platformer experience, playing like the best worlds of Super Mario 3D World, but with Donkey Kong Country sensibilities. You really are getting the best of both worlds in one game. So to sum up the gameplay section, as I said, Nintendo absolutely cooked and then some. While do be aware that there are a few performance hiccups here and there, like some occasional dropped frames, these are not game-breaking issues, nowhere near the level of issues seen in games like Tears of the Kingdom on the Switch 1. And my only other nitpick is that I found most of the bosses too easy, but thankfully there is a post-game boss rush that makes up for it, with more challenging variations of those battles. Donkey Kong Bananza's gameplay is a wholly original and creative experience that both captures the spirit of previous Donkey Kong Country games and 3D Mario platformers, while still forging its own path to give players something wholly original and, more importantly, fun, with a decidedly capital F. And on the subject of splitting the difference between old and new, let's talk about that music. Now, music has always been one of the unifying elements that ties Donkey Kong games together. There's a reason that DKC tracks are always raking in the views on YouTube, with Aquatic Ambience and Sticker Brush Symphony constantly getting covered by musicians on social media. It remains to be seen whether the Bananza tracks will inspire people to that degree, but what's here is rock solid. I really love the electronic, meditative tracks that play in the so-called bonus room challenges. They really help the player zone in and focus up on tricky platforming. The environmental music in Overworlds also perfectly complements what's on screen. Snowy music sounds snowy, forest music sounds foresty, and so on. If you've ever played DKC, you know what I'm talking about. Now, the more controversial element of the soundtrack is Pauline's vocal tracks when in Bonanza mode. Each of the 5 Bonanzas has a different theme song, and these are all punchy, aggressive, lively songs in which Pauline loudly sings in gibberish. While they do enhance the excitement of playing as a transformed DK, I did get a bit sick of hearing them, especially as I was finishing up the game using one particular transformation to grind out those collectibles. And when doing some of the more tricky challenges, I prefer the meditative, zoning in style of music, so the loud, boisterous Bonanza themes came off as distracting rather than exciting, and compounded frustrations if I messed up. I realize not everyone feels the same way when it comes to music, and that may just be me, but I wish these themes got reined in here and there. And finally, the visuals. DKC has always been pure cinema. Lonely trudges across beautiful landscapes accompanied by equally beautiful music. This is why 64 and Returns are my least favourite games, as they have a more wacky and lively aesthetic, compared to the original trilogy and Tropical Freeze's more atmospheric feel. Which means I'm pleased to report Bonanza leans more into beauty than wackiness, with these environments feeling more like real places, with the development team's efforts on display in every corner of the world. However, there are a few wacky places here and there, like a giant hamburger tower that randomly appears later in the game, but for the most part, it is pure cinema, and a great visual showcase for what the Switch 2 is capable of. And now, for my final thoughts on Donkey Kong Bonanza. Needless to say, my hype and expectations for this game were stratospherically high. Donkey Kong Country 2 is my favourite game of all time, so anything with DK carries that level of expectation from me. And it's almost making me tear up to say it, but Donkey Kong Bonanza lives up to the titular ape's storied legacy, and then some. Not only is it a great Donkey Kong game, but something entirely new, and is the killer app for the Switch 2. Blending a charming story, great characters, insanely fun gameplay, beautiful music, and breathtaking graphics, Donkey Kong Bonanza is the complete package. While tipping its hat to what came before, it never leans too hard into nostalgia, and re-elevates Donkey Kong to his rightful superstar status. Donkey Kong Bananza is destined to be considered one of the greatest games of all time, and is a hell of an achievement from Nintendo. Say what you like about the business side of that company, and whether or not the Switch 2 and its games are too expensive, but you cannot deny that the creative side of that company is innovating like no other game development studio out there, and that level of effort and commitment is fully on display here in Donkey Kong Bananza. It's Nintendo at their creative finest, and not to be missed by all Switch 2 owners. And if you don't yet own a Switch 2, this is hopefully the first game of many that is reason enough to buy one, a showcase for what's to come as the next console generation is just getting started. So thanks for watching until the end. Have you played Donkey Kong Bananza? What's your favorite Donkey Kong game? Whatever your thoughts, let me know in the comments down below. For more Switch 2 game reviews, don't forget to hit subscribe. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.